Welcome to Bruise News. Double G, Carlos Toro, Jeremy Finestone. For those watching on the video, we're going to bring in Andrew and Rich, actually, both podcasts and video. We're going to bring those guys in. Unfortunately, and this is what happens when you live stream, they have issues with the internet, so they're rebooting and they're going to get all caught up, and then we'll bring them on here. First, before we actually get to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about with Carlos and Jeremy here, we have a PO-op for this show specifically. So if you've been following our podcasts, all the podcasts that we've been doing this week, we have PO-ops for a lot of them. And so what is a PO-op? A PO-op is it's a version of an NFT. And I'll quickly read through how you can get this PO-op. If you have you need a digital wallet of sorts. It's MetaMask is the one that I use. Download the PO-op app on whatever mobile device that you have. Enter your ENS, ETH address or your email address. If you do not have your digital wallet yet, the bottom right-hand corner, there's a mint button. Select secret word, and that secret word for this podcast is Bruise Weekend. So type that in, and then you can mint the PO-op. If you have any troubles, fightgamemediapoop@gmail.com. And also, all this stuff is free. There is a utility involved. Come Double or Nothing weekend, we are going to unveil the winners of 3 prizes. One of them will be a cameo-style question and answer from Dave Meltzer about pro wrestling or MMA or pop culture, if you want. Another prize is to be a guest on a Fight Game Media podcast of your choice. And then thirdly, we have a physical gift as well, a physical prize, which will be a chair at a wrestling event, Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, whatever's available, we'll pick that up. So, okay, got that out of the way. Secret word is Bruise Weekend. So, fellas, we are right smack dab in the middle of I guess we're still at the beginning. There's tons of shows yesterday. There's tons of shows today. Obviously, Saturday and Sunday, they're big WrestleMania days, NXT. I'm gonna when Andrew and Rich come on, I'm gonna focus a little bit more on WrestleMania. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the shoulder events to WrestleMania. Jeremy, have you watched anything yet?
No, today was the day that I set aside for all the indie shows, anything that I was going to watch that wasn't WWE or whatnot. I didn't have the bandwidth to get into it yesterday. I heard a lot of great things about Bloodsport, but I got 3 events in mind to watch today.
All right, and then what are those?
I'm gonna start with the New Japan show that happens at the same time as our Twitter Spaces later today.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna stick over to the Ring of Honor show. And then I'm going to go over to the multiverse of matches over that the Impact show is doing. I'm really interested in the showcases that they have, spotlighting wrestlers I haven't really had a chance to see before in profile matches. That seems like a good opportunity for visibility, which I always love on WrestleMania weekend.
And Carlos, what about you?
I definitely paid a lot of attention to what was going on with Bloodsport. It was a tremendous show that just kept getting better and better. Some of the highlights that you're seeing around on Twitter, it's just unbelievable. I would say of all the Bloodsport shows that they've had since its inception, I would say this one may have been the best one, in my opinion. I don't think I've seen all of them, but of the ones that I've watched, I mean, this was the one that I've enjoyed the most so far. Bloodsport was terrific, and I'm really looking forward to the RH show later tonight. I love Red Titus versus Minoru Suzuki on paper. FTR Briscoes should be a barn burner. I'm looking forward to that as well.
So let's talk about that Bloodsport show for a second here, because I thought John Moxley and Biff Busick was maybe the best Bloodsport match that I've seen so far. Now, I haven't, like you said, I haven't seen every single show. The memorable one that sticks out to me is the one WrestleMania weekend in New York. So that was about 3 years ago, because we got to see Josh Barnett and Minoru Suzuki. Now, that match was excellent. There was some stuff on the outside that I think some hardcore fans may have had an issue with. This is a little bit too much pro wrestling. But I thought this was the perfect mix of that style paired with the dramatic, the selling, the climax of a finish or whatever the finish was going to be. Biff was, he was taking everything and not giving up because there's no pinfalls in events like this. So that was my favorite Bloodsport match so far. And there was also tons of stuff. And so John LaRocca and I talked last night on the Fight Game podcast. JR Kratos and Tim Thatcher, the first time I saw both of those guys was at John's Premier Wrestling, which was in the Bay Area. Actually, it was in it was closer to, it's still part of the Bay Area, but it was, the southern part of Northern California, I guess, in Gilroy. So I got to see those guys, and we're talking going back, like 8 or 9 years now. And so I got to see Kratos, I got to see Thatcher, both doing their thing. So now we fast forward WrestleMania weekend, and I told John this was like a premiere, because that was the name of his promotion, Premier Wrestling. This was a premier style match, and really, Bloodsport is a cousin to what John was trying to do. Now, John had ropes. Is really the also the place where Jeff Cobb just kicked it into gear back then. But the style in which the wrestling, John loves the word gaga, like very little gaga. I remember one of the only times I saw him get really mad is there was a match with the Almighty Sheik and I forget the other guy, but like they took it all around the arena and they like broke a piece of the wall in the arena. And John was just mad. He was mad because they broke the thing, but he was like, this is not really what we do here. John also had a tournament called what is it called? Brace for the Grind, or it was some like rounds, like there was like a rounds element to it. So that Kratos and Thatcher match reminded me a lot of that. Kratos blades right in the middle of his forehead, blood's coming down. Thatcher is doing his thing. It's so funny because you look at Tim Thatcher, and he's very much he looks like a mean person. He just looks like a mean guy. And then when you go and have Denny's with him, he's like the funniest, nicest guy. Now I may have ruined his mystique there a little bit, but really cool guy. Okay, so what do we expect on this ROH show tonight? I know Tony Khan was on Busted Open, and he said William Regal will be there to watch the Wheeler Yuta match, which plays into a storyline on AEW Dynamite. And then he teased a fun surprise for this show. Can you guys, like, if you're putting your Tony Khan cap on here, Carlos, we'll start with you. Mm-hmm. Give me a couple of ideas of what the surprise could be in your mind.
I mean, the ones that immediately popped into my head may not necessarily be the completely out of the box thinking. I think a lot of people are hoping this would happen, but it makes sense. I think Cesaro and Joe, especially given their history in ROH, I think that would make for a very fun surprise at the end of the show. And obviously, William Regal has had plenty of history, especially with Cesaro back in the NXT, in the old NXT days. And and we both know, and we know Tony Khan wants to do everything in his power to be the absolute talk of WrestleMania weekend. Like, he wants to sort of take over. And I think anything below that, barring something, I don't know, something huge in relation to AEW, I think going with those types of names, I think they could be pretty good way to end the show.
All right, Jeremy, you pride yourself on being at the pulse of this stuff sometimes. And if you get this right, I will be okay with the back pat. If you get this one right, I will be okay with it. Well, do you have any thoughts?
I was leaning towards what Carlos said, but I'm going to add more to that. I would expect to see some type of Hall of Fame class altogether in some way, shape, or form at the end of the show. So I think Punk being there is probably a good guess. I'd hedge leaning towards Danielson if that was a possibility. I just think all these guys have a lot of love for it. and are buying into everything that Tony Khan has. So I don't know the nuance deep into Ring of Honor, but if I had to lean onto something that would tap into the general pop culture, it would have to be something big like the Hall of Fame class and or Cesaro and Joe, which is
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my prediction. I am going with Samoa Joe is going to be the commissioner of ROH. He's going to show up at the end of the show. There's going to be something to do in the title match where we need a decision from a decision maker, and Samoa Joe is going to be that guy. Now, I also thought about this. Well, they're kind of copying what NXT did with Samoa Joe, right? He was the enforcer. He was working with Regal. And I don't think they really care about copying NXT because we have a group in AEW currently called the Undisputed Elite. So I don't think they care very much, but I would love to see something like that. But Jeremy's Hall of Fame idea is great. If Punk and Danielson are there and they're kind of come on stage and they get the heroes welcome, that would be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And if we get a match with Cesaro and Samoa Joe, or just just an idea that those guys are going to be in the mix in some way, though, I kind of wonder if you're Cesaro, you want to work AEW. I don't think you want to work ROH. That would be my thought on that situation.
I don't know about that. I feel like if you're Cesaro and you're watching all this talent that we all see kind of bottlenecking at a certain level, and you know that your skill set is such that you can have great matches with anybody, being in ROH when there's a vacuum and you can fill that vacuum pretty quickly, that's a great place to be. And he's the kind of guy that has been looking for an opportunity to be a top guy.
Now here's the counter. He comes from a place where he's wrestling in front of 8,000 people on TV every week, right? Mm-hmm. When he is in a main event or more than just being low on the card. This ROH show, I think they're going to do like 1,500 people, something like that, 2,000 maybe. Mm-hmm. So if he goes from the big time, which is WWE, transitioning to AEW, which is, right there as far as the big time is concerned, maybe, they're running smaller buildings, but the news and the zeitgeist of professional wrestling, that's where you want to be. We'll see what happens with ROH, but I just look at ROH as a smaller place and maybe a lesser version of what they're able to do pretty big time at AEW.
I'm going to sort of maybe one of what I originally said, as I mentioned something, and maybe AEW gets involved. I could also see a scenario where Cesaro, a guy like Cesaro comes in, and not necessarily sticks with ROH, but there'd be a lot more crossover with AEW. And I could see maybe at the end of the show, Cesaro kind of comes in and they also announce, and Regal announces, we're bringing back War of the Worlds and using AEW talent, like a lot of AEW talent on that show. Maybe you can bring back some New Japan talent to work that show, because I know War of the Worlds is a ROH and a New Japan type of deal. So, and you can include Cesaro in that way and sort of reintroducing him into the ROH/AEW audience.
So just to update the people watching, the Mat Men will be on shortly. They were having internet issues. Andrew's got this beautiful studio in his house, and that's where we record everything. Like, we're Live Pal. He records Mat Men, Wrestling Observer Live. And, the thing that makes that studio hum is having workable internet. And for whatever reason, the internet is not working at his house. So they're going to join. They will join from their phones, and it'll be good. But just we won't have the fancy schmancy Andrew Zarian touch studio that everyone is used to. Okay, so a couple other things before I let you guys go. Maybe we'll do this because we're gonna do a Twitter Spaces in a few hours. For Fight Game Media. And I'm going to lead. I want us to do tons of predictions. I'm going to give people scenarios, and I want them to tell me what they think. Now, Jeremy, I'm going to give you the opportunity. what is one prediction that you have for either night of WrestleMania that you are pretty confident on? And we'll let this be the tease to our discussion on Twitter Spaces at 3 p.m. Pacific here.
I mean, I'm just going to go with the low-hanging fruit. I think Roman wins the Unification Championship match, and every indication leads me to believe that is a foregone conclusion.
All right. Carlos, do you have one?
I'm going to predict that the Stone Cold segment at night 1 leads to, albeit one with plenty of smoke and mirrors, a match with Stone Cold on night 2.
Oh, God.
Oh, interesting. This is what Jeremy had predicted previously for Cody. Jeremy had this idea for Cody that on night 1, Cody would interrupt Seth, and then they would set up a match, or whoever he was going to interrupt on night 2.
At some point, they are going to incorporate the 2-night WrestleMania with a night 1 leading into night 2 event. I don't know how, but you got to keep this interest going, and they're going to escalate it in ways that we haven't figured out before.
And it feels weird because it feels weird that they haven't already done that before. New Japan was able to pull it off on their first try for Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, totally.
If they build a match for Stone Cold to lead into night 2, I would say that night 2 is far and away going to be a greater night than night 1. But if there is a longer conflict between Stone Cold and Kevin Owens, I am hedging that night 1 might be better than night 2 as a whole.
All right. So, like I said, we'll be back on Twitter Spaces in a few hours here, and we'll talk more about this stuff. But I want to leave the last few minutes before we bring on the Mat Man, and I'm watching Andrew Zarian put on a sports coat. He's getting ready. Rich is got like some fancy background that I'm trying to make out. I can't see it, but these guys are coming. They're going to be here in a second here. But Carlos, there's some pretty interesting boxing news that has come out. You and Robert talked about the first half of that on the latest episode of Pound for Pound, and that is the Inoue fight with Donaire, part 2. So talk about that a little bit. How did that get set up? Obviously, they're coming off of the fight of the year, at least fight of the year contender from 2019. A lot of people think, you're talking about pound for pound, one of the top guys against someone who's now going to be in his late 30s. So what do you think? I imagine monetarily, this is where they had to go for both guys.
Yeah. So now Inoue, Nonito Donaire, for those who don't know, had maybe one of the greatest bantamweight title fights in history, in boxing history, a few years ago in Japan, and it was a phenomenal fight that kind of, even in a loss, kind of revitalized Nonito Donaire's career, because afterwards he went on to win a WBC bantamweight title, and it now is looked at as the number 2 to Inoue's number 1. Inoue is by and large on his way to become the greatest Japanese boxer in history. So they're going to have a rematch June 7 in Japan, on more than likely on an ESPN platform. It's funny. So Robert and I were doing the podcast, and right at the very end, I see a tweet from Amazon Prime Video, which actually has the Japanese broadcast rights to that fight, saying, yep, it's official, June 7th. It's going to be for 3 of the 4 bantamweight world titles, to be WBC, WBA, and IBF. But essentially, whoever wins that fight will be the top bantamweight, as if that wasn't already abundantly clear. And I mean, these are 2 guys who put on a phenomenal fight, and Donaire is still on this incredible resurgence. I think the rematch is going to be just as good as their first fight. And you can look it up on YouTube for those of you who have not seen it. It is just an unbelievable 36 minutes between these 2.
All right. And then after you guys finished wrapping up, the next day came out news that George Kambosos Jr. and Devin Haney are going to mix it up that same week, 3 days later.
3 days earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 days earlier. And that's a pretty big fight. And people remember Kambosos from beating Teofimo Lopez on the fight that bounced from Triller and back and forth, like the mess that fight was. But okay, so let's talk about that news. How big of a fight do you see that one as?
So it's a pretty big fight, all things considered. I mean, originally it was supposed to be George Kambosos versus Vasily Lomachenko, but given the situation in Ukraine, Lomachenko is not available at this moment, so they have to go with the next best option.
He is staying home to defend his country, essentially, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and he's been doing that for a few weeks now. Him and Alexander Usyk were basically doing that alongside with the Klitschko brothers. Usyk finally just had said that he's going to be now focusing on the rematch. We just don't know when and where
with Joshua.
Going to be. With Anthony Joshua. So still, these are the two guys who are essentially the only title holders in the lightweight division, discounting the secondary world title Gervonta Davis has. But this is really for the true undisputed lightweight champion, because there's been a lot of sort of in-between mess over what's considered the undisputed lightweight title between what George Kambosos has and Devin Haney has. Stylistically, it's a very intriguing matchup. Devin Haney is a very, very good technical boxer who has surprisingly decent power, but, it opts to be more of a boxer. Kambosos is a very aggressive fighter. He gave Teofimo Lopez a lot of trouble from the get-go in their first fight last year. So if that's any indication, obviously that fight turned out to be pretty good. I think the fight against Haney, which is going to take place in Australia, it's going to be a very solid one. It's honestly a 50-50 fight. I know a lot of people are picking Haney to win this one. I think, we have not seen Kambosos sort of go up against a real world-class boxer quite like a Devin Haney. His last couple of fights, Lee Selby and Teofimo Lopez, not exactly guys you would say are elite world-class boxers. So for those of you who want to tune in, it's interesting. The fight's going to air in prime time in the United States on ESPN on June 4, but in Australia, it's going to air on June 5th. So in the early afternoon. Basically, if you remember the Manny Pacquiao-Jeff Horn fight, essentially that, where it is primetime the US, but it's going to be daylight out there. And
how many people are going to get in that stadium?
So that's the interesting narrative. So they want to try and hopefully get to 50,000 at Marvel Stadium in Melbourne. They believe that they have a pretty good chance of doing so, with the possibility of breaking the Australian record, which was set by the Jeff Horn Manny Pacquiao fight, which was 51,000 and change back in 2017. It's quite an interesting leap to go from, for Kambosos never headlined a major show. I mean, even the DAZN card, Teofimo Lopez was the A-side star attraction for that one. Kambosos was just the opponent. So now him going to be the A-side, the big draw against Devin Haney, who's headlined some good DAZN shows, some at Madison Square Garden, but never at the big Garden, and never really been a massive 12,000, 14,000 people in attendance type of draw. That's a big ask, but I think that they might I don't know if they're going to break that number, but I think they'll get close.
All right. Well, thank you to both of you for doing this. Originally, you were going to be the main event, and the Mat Men were going to be the openers, but now we flip-flopped it, so the Mat Men are going to be the main event. So Jeremy and Carlos, I think, are going to attempt to be on the Twitter Spaces as well. And for folks listening on the podcast, you can still listen to the Twitter Spaces, even though it's a live thing. We've created an archive for the recording, so even if you missed the live listening, you can listen to it on at Fight Game Media on Twitter. All right, fellas, thank you very much. I will see you shortly.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Awesome.
All right, let's bring in Rich and Andrew.
Oh, geez.
The Mat Men. Look at them.
Oh, brother.
Here's the thing. We're both in the same location. I don't know if you can see. Rich is all the way over there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There we go. Nice. I like the bar, dude. I didn't see the bar.
Oh, yeah. This is the bar. We're at the club.
He still thinks you're at your house, man.
God. I thought you were at the house. I was like hyping up the house studio. I didn't know you were at the club. Nice.
No. I was in the city, and I think I'm getting feedback from Rich, but here. I'm going to move in a little bit. Oh, there, Rich just went away. Yeah, I'm at the club, and I was like, oh, let's just set it up and do it this way. And the whole thing just fell apart.
Yeah, it's all right though.
All right,
right,
all right. Yeah, no, look, this is great. We get to see a little bit of a different, a little bit of a different view here. I mean, we got a bar in the back, and it's like only 12:30 my time. Like, I'm getting kind of anxious here. I'm like, do I need to grab a drink or something? But all right, so you guys are here, and I really appreciate you guys coming on. I love when I get a chance to talk to Andrew pretty much every week. We do a show. I've done Observer Live. He's come on this show before, so Andrew and I have a pretty cool chemistry here. But we're trying to. I'm happy to bring Rich into the mix because I've talked to Rich a couple of times when I was guesting on Mat Men, and I've met him in person. So really cool, really cool opportunity. But yeah, so I'm just happy to have both of you guys on here, man. So let's talk about this stuff like WrestleMania. And Andrew and I talked about this on We're Live, Pal, sort of like the history of this weekend for people. Like Rich, like what is this a big week? Growing up as a wrestling fan, obviously pretty big weekend for you, but like have you been to WrestleMania events in the past and done the whole, several shows over the weekend before?
First of all, thanks for having us on, by the way. So it took a while to get here, but we're here. You know what? Growing up a wrestling fan, I have been to a million shows. I've never done a full live WrestleMania weekend.
Really?
I feel like it's like at this point in the game, it's a little bit daunting. Like from what I've been told, Dallas is basically like Olympic Village at this point, where it's just like bodies on top of bodies and nobody knows where they're going. People are waking up in different beds in different hotel rooms, So it's like kind of gnarly. Yeah. Honestly, it does sound super lazy, but I love just being able to hang out with Andrew and do a couple of podcasts, sit on the couch, order some food, and just like chill out. And you know what? Instead of being there with 1,000 million screaming people, we get to see the camera work. We get to hear the commentators. We get to see all that. So like that's kind of like for stuff like this is what I prefer. But if it's like a different show, like an All Out, I would prefer to be there.
So that means you're coming to Double or Nothing, right?
Let's see about that, maybe.
Now I don't know if you know this news, but this sort of became news yesterday that Andrew and I are hosting the suite party for Double or Nothing weekend on Saturday night at Cosmo. So that'll be kind of live. I told the big boss, Tony Leader, that Andrew's probably the most perfect person to do this. So I'm excited to sort of be by his side in this, but this is really, his kind of path here is just marketing and pushing this stuff. So I mean, I'm excited. So now that we're we're doing it, so it's going to be live.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That I didn't even think about it. I just saw what you sent in the email. I was like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that has been happening. So I don't know, Andrew, if you knew or have any insight, but I guess Triple H was at the. I guess there were some tryouts going on this weekend, and he's been a participant. This is coming off of his interview with Stephen A. Smith on Stephen A. Smith's World, where he talked about how how dire the situation was with his heart, and that people didn't really know what was going on, and how and really his job, even if he wanted to come back at the same level, he just literally can't because his heart will not allow it because of the issue that he had. So have you heard anything about this weekend and his involvement?
Nothing other than he spoke to the talent, and it was very emotional. Talent had a lot of questions. He obviously addressed a lot of his health issues, but it seemed like it was a very emotional thing. And then he introduced Nick Khan, and I believe he introduced him as one of his best friends.
Wow.
One of his closest friends. Yeah, he said, I believe he said he's one of his closest friends. So very interesting stuff, but it looks like, he's back, but I don't think he's back in the capacity he was in prior.
Right. I can't imagine that he will be. And then there was also, this weekend, what's very interesting to me And I don't know, I kind of wrote about it on the website about, Nick Khan's WWE, in that not only is this weekend the biggest weekend as far as the two giant shows that they're going to do in at AT&T, but they're also using all of the I guess all of the feedback, all of the promotion behind this show to slip some stories in there. Like, have you guys seen they announced the showrunners for the United States versus Vince McMahon docuseries that they're doing? They also announced a new deal with Fanatics to run the shop, the WWE shop store. So Fanatics, who has just bought all these different licenses, now they basically run the sports card industry to an extent. They're going to get the WWE license for sports cards. WWE just started their license with Panini this year. The first box of cards under this Panini license comes out this weekend, and they've already made the next deal. So Panini's kind of like a lame duck. So that is out there. NFTs through Fanatics, through the Fanatics owners company. And then there was one other thing. Oh, this Vince McMahon fictionalized series, or I guess not him, but he's executive producing with Kevin Dunn, called Pinned, which will be somewhere in the NBC universe. Like, this is a way for them to push stuff out outside of the actual wrestling. Like, this is content that they are building towards that doesn't even have to do with WrestleMania. Like, I find that detail to be so fascinating. Rich, have you been following any of this stuff?
Yeah, it's very interesting. We mentioned this on our show yesterday about how, like, I guess it's got to the point where it's so big that WWE needs to start outsourcing what was once their internal processes, and I'm kind of interested to see where this is going. And I want to see what that whole Vince thing is, as much of a character as that guy is, and as much as people can hate or love him, I'm always intrigued to see what Vince projects are in the works. It's just like, it's almost like a car wreck where I want to what do you call it when you see a car, when you want to rubberneck, right?
Yes,
it's like
yes,
rubbernecking, and you want to see what's going on, even though maybe it's not in your best interest. It's a little cringy, probably, but that's how I feel about it.
By the way, we're getting some feedback from the live viewers. Keisaku, who helps us with our NFTs. I mean, he basically runs the show. I just do what he tells me. He says the dream team on Bruise News, love it. And then Mel, who's got a podcast, she's doing a live show on Sunday on Fight Game Media YouTube. She just exclaimed "Rich" like very loudly. So she's a Rich fan. Okay, Andrew. So the idea that WrestleMania is not just about the in-ring, like, it's not like when UFC has a giant show, Dana White is also going like, oh, by the way, I'm executive producing this TV show that's coming out, or there's this documentary that we sold to Netflix. Like, this is like an extension of what I imagine Vince's big dream was for WWF at the time when, go back to WrestleMania 1. It was only about the wrestling. Now, it was about the merchandising off of the wrestling. It was the dolls. It was the toys. It was getting all of the, Hogan next to Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper and Wendy Richter. But it was all a merchandising thing. It was all a pop culture thing. How do we become in the minds of, like, Hollywood? But now, 38 years later, hiring Nick Khan, and I listened to a podcast with the guy by the name of Matthew Bellany, who used to write for the Hollywood Reporter. And he knows Nick, and he's like, I would have never pegged you for this role because I've always seen you as an agent type. And Nick's like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, well, you can talk to anybody and you can get a meeting with anybody and everybody knows you and you know everybody. Like, and so to me, that's what Vince McMahon always wanted. Now he's got his guy. And this is why also I don't think that they're selling anytime soon, because this has to be what Vince McMahon always wanted to be. He's got a seat at the table almost everywhere now. A lot of it to him, some of it on the backs of Stone Cold and The Rock, but also because of this relationship with Nick Khan. You follow this stuff very closely with Nick Khan. Like, what is your overall broad sort of big picture thought about what they're doing with this stuff?
Well, I think this is overall the WWE big picture idea, right? This is something that they've always wanted. You just mentioned 38 years they've been wanting this, and they finally found the guy that could help them link up. For years, even though, they had movie studio. They had a music record album. I mean, they had sitcom pilots. They had all these ideas that never panned out because they didn't have the right guy with the right connections. Wrestling for us has always been mainstream, but for other people, it's a subculture. It's something that was shunned for many years on TV. The fact that Vince is getting close to $1 billion a year in TV rights is unbelievable. That's something that's unheard of, especially for a professional wrestling company. So I think this is the right guy to get them into that mainstream positioning. And this is something we talk about all the time. WWE is not pro wrestling anymore. They are their own entity. They are a media conglomerate. They're sports entertainment officially. They've used that term for years, but now I believe they are. And it's just going to continue from here. And Nick is the guy with the connections.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me just where they've come, and they're a content machine now. They're in the Hollywood Reporter, they're in Variety, all of their news and their PR, and the PR wing is been tremendous for them as well, because they've had some very negative things, right? Like there's been a lot of negativity that has happened, but we don't see it as much of late. They've kind of figured out how to stay away from that stuff, though. I'm sure we don't hear a lot about steroids anymore. I'm sure.
Well, I'll give an example. I mean, Garrett, great example, right? When the releases happened, the first names we got was from the New York Post. When there was a ratings change, let's say for AEW, right? And Sportski or what? I forgot the website. Sportskeeda. It wasn't Sportskeeda. It was another website, but like a mainstream sports website is talking about how AEW is suffering in the ratings and the NHL isn't doing too well. That's not an article that came up from a writer. That's a PR phone call that said, "Hey, listen, do us a favor, write this story." I don't know if you saw the AEW numbers, but their PR arm is very deep, as deep as any movie studio or any TV, network. Yeah, and they've just accelerated everything. I would say having Nick Khan there accelerated that company's trajectory by 10 years. All right, as far as mainstream crossover goes.
Well, a couple more things, and I'll let you guys go. And I really appreciate you guys doing this. I know it was kind of hard. There was some difficulty in doing this. Okay, so I'm doing this because we have a Twitter Spaces that is happening in a few hours here. And in the Twitter Spaces, I'm going to take predictions from people. So I want one WrestleMania prediction from the both of you as we tease to the next show that we're doing here on Twitter Spaces. So, Rich, what's one thing that you think is happening at either of the two nights of WrestleMania?
Bray Wyatt.
You think he's coming back?
I think something's going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very interesting.
I'm going out there for this one. I'm going to say Bray Wyatt.
Huh. All right, Andrew, I want your reaction to that prediction, and then I want a prediction from you as well.
I'm going to look like a genius if this comes true, by the
way. If this comes true, we're snipping this one out and we're making it its own video.
I'm not saying Bray Wyatt, but I am gonna. I mean, is it bold to say that? You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say Cody is not facing Seth Rollins. How about that?
Ooh,
wow!
Not that I know that. I don't know that to be a fact. I'm just saying, man, what a swerve that would be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do I need to play "Here Comes the Money" for you right now? Is that what I need to do?
No, man. I want it to be like Goldberg or Ryback.
The Ryback.
ZZ from Tough Enough.
Make the internet blow. Yeah, ZZ from Tough Enough. Yeah.
That's hilarious. All right, last question, and there is a lot of there's a lot of anticipation for this ROH show tonight, and as I told the other guys, the news from Tony today is that there's going to be a fun surprise at the end. He already mentioned William Regal's going to be there scouting Wheeler Yuta. I always screw his name up. Wheeler Yuta. So do you have any thoughts, Andrew, about this possible Tony Khan prediction? Because I always expected him. I have a feeling like he wants to win this weekend as far as like news is concerned. He's not going to touch WrestleMania. I'm not talking about overdoing WWE, but just the rest of the shoulder programming. I have a feeling he wants to win this weekend when it comes to, just hype created. Do you have any thoughts on what this prediction, this fun surprise could be?
Bray Wyatt, Ring of Honor debut.
There you go.
You know what? I'll go with a safe one. Samoa Joe.
That's what I thought too. That's the one that I picked. Talk about fan service, right? One of the most beloved ROH guys of all time, and it tells the ROH fans, okay, you are doing this for us too. I'm sure a lot of ROH fans are AEW fans, but it's like, I'm sure there's going to be some of it where it's like Tony's gonna, he's gonna put the people he wants to put in those situations. But if you can also play towards the old fans, then that'll be, I think that'll be the best for everybody. All right. I want to thank you guys for doing this. I know there was some difficulty.
I
You
know,
guys
my
made
apologies,
it work.
Garrett.
You got stuff like that happens, but you guys hustled. You guys hustled for us here. All right, we're gonna go here. Like I said, we're doing a YouTube. We're doing a Twitter Spaces in a few hours here. That'll be archived, so if people want to listen to that. Also, we're coming back to Bruise News, 2 live Bruise Newses after WrestleMania as post-game shows. And there's going to be a Power Bombshells live stream as well on Sunday before all the chaos happens on Sunday. And then you guys will be back on Thursday talking all the stuff that you guys talk about chemistry when it comes to, 2 people radio shows. You guys have great chemistry. And then Andrew and I will be back Tuesday on We're Live, Pal. So lots and lots of crazy stuff going on, and we're going to cover as much as we possibly can. Thanks again to Andrew and Rich, the Mat Men of Mat Men podcast. And so for Andrew, for Rich, also previously for Carlos and Jeremy, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.